Erev Tov. Thank you so much for coming. I really hope it's good. Had to miss a football game for this. Now, tonight's topic is the 10 habits of love. I'm not sure exactly which of the 10 are the 10 habits of love. I was hoping that somebody would think about this year and email me and tell me what you think the 10 habits are. Because it could go a couple of different ways. How's that? Challenging? So you got to listen up. Give me the 10 at the end of the class. So we're here to talk about the mitzvah in the Torah, love your neighbor as yourself, which commands us to love each other. And love, singularly, according to Rabbi Akiva, is the most important fundamental principle in the Torah. V'ahavta l're'echa kamocha ze klal gadol b'Torah. Love your neighbor as yourself is equal to all the other mitzvahs in the Torah. When a prospective convert came to Hillel the elder, the convert said, give me all of Torah while I stand on one foot, meaning like, make it snappy. Give me the essence of this. So Hillel said his take on love your neighbor as yourself, he said, that is hateful to your brother, don't do. God even considers love amongst one another more important than how we treat him. I'm paraphrasing from the Talmud, I'm not sure where it is exactly, but it's if God says, if there's a choice between following my mitzvahs or serving me, don't do me any favors. Do my mitzvahs. You could even see this played out in the respective punishments of the Dor HaFlaga, Tower of Babel, and the Dor HaMabel, the generation of the flood. Right? Tower of Babel, what do we see? Rebellion against Hashem, fighting against Hashem, and what do you get? Just a mere dispersal. Put the people all around, change the language up. Parshas Noach sins man against a man. Oh, we're going to wipe out all of humanity. God considers how we treat each other the most paramount thing in our Torah. Lastly, it's really the ultimate tikkun that we need to bring Mashiach is love. Because when you think about it on a deeper level, it's really a lack of love amongst the Jewish people. That led to sinas chinam, lack of Jewish unity, lashon hara. And the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, and God's presence was exiled from our lives. The root, a lack of love. And until we make that tikkun, and according to our Rebbeim, the Chafetz Chaim says, any generation, that we're not suffering from the sins of that generation back 2,000 years ago, that we could end the gullus, and every generation that hasn't built a Beis Hamikdash, it's as if they destroyed it themselves. It's up to us. I mean, what kind of world do we all want to live in? I don't know, one of love, peace, brotherhood, or illness and poverty? I don't know. You got to choose. Ultimately, it's also a lack of love that we desperately need in our lives, with our spouses, with our friends, our children. Right? The love that we have between us that connects us is what makes life worth living. Brings us connection, belonging. So we'll do it a little roundabout. To get the most clarity about love, I first want to talk about what love isn't. Love isn't infatuation. Infatuation is the illusionary, counterfeit pleasure of love that we all fall into from time to time when we're seeking the real thing. In a room full of singles, I always ask, how many people here are planning on getting married? And everybody raises their hands. And then I ask, who here is planning to get divorced? No one. Right? I went like, really? Nobody's planning on getting divorced? There is a 50% divorce rate. So no one plans on getting divorced, and everybody, of course, thinks their marriage will last forever. But how is it possible that the same couple who never dreamed of having anything getting in the way of their love can get to such a place of acrimonious relationship between them and, God forbid, end in divorce? So the question is, what can we do, what can we understand to minimize our chances of being one of the numbers? And I do include married couples in this. Not only do we need to make sure that we marry for love and not infatuation, but we know how to stay in love, and once we're married, how to keep it and if we lose it, how to recapture it. One helpful idea is to understand the very well-defined concepts of love and infatuation, and what's the difference. And still, even once you hear them, it's still hard to maintain them throughout your marriage and throughout life. And the question would, why would that be? Why would the concepts getting confused with infatuation be so difficult? Because it's almost impossible not to be entirely influenced by the societal values that are around you. We have been in America and in Gullus for a very long time. The concepts that Western society gives out on a continuous and constant basis about love, like I will say the ones I grew up with, are all rooted in Greek philosophy. And Greek philosophy, love is romantic love. Cupid, you know, what they do on Valentine's Day. But if you don't know, Cupid is stupid. Right. Now, the ultimate love scene that I grew up with, many of us grew up with, was the following. Handsome young man, very well-shaped, slender young woman, tall, on the beach, the sun is setting, beautiful music. They're in full embrace, lips locking. Isn't that the scene? So Cupid sneaks up with his bow and arrow, shoots the arrow, and bam, they are in love. They have fallen in love happily ever after. Now, just the word fall, they fell in love. Well, it just seems to indicate it's something that happened to them. They're just a victim. Well, the movie ends, and what if we were able to follow this couple off the screen into their lives? What would we see? We might see the following. So they buy a house, they're working long hours, or he's working long hours, a lot of bills, big mortgage, a lot of pressure. They're seeing each other less and less, and they're having less and less fun. And she gets pregnant right away. Now, you know what they say, you marry 4 ladies in your lifetime. It's the one that you were dating, that's fun. The one you got married to, that's good too, Sheva brachas. And then there's the one that gets pregnant. It's not as fun. And then there's the one that raises your kids. Now, look, you have to, ladies, I'm sorry, I am a guy, it's guys talk. So now she's pregnant, and she's demanding for the first time. Could even be a little downright nasty, maybe. Anyway, you never realized how critical she is or how needy. Boy, she sleeps a lot. She's not doting on me the same way. And gosh, she doesn't look exactly the same way. And you're like, I didn't really bargain for this. One late night, he's working late at the office, and he can't take his eyes off that cute, sweet secretary. You know, the one who laughs at all of his jokes. The one who always asks him, like, what can I do for you? Solicitous, and all of a sudden, Cupid sneaks up again, shoots the arrow, bam. In with the secretary, out with the wife. What is happening here? Now, the feeling that he's feeling about the secretary, it's a real feeling. But just like he had fallen in love in the first place, he fell out of love. And the question was, or is, what is the original feeling? What was that based upon? Now, many of us have had our own starry-eyed experience, maybe, where you were in a relationship, time stood still, you felt emotionally bonded, and you felt as if it would last forever, only to see it slip away. But the real truth is that more often, we often don't know how we got those feelings in the first place. We know less how to keep them, even less if we lost it, how to get it back. And this type of love that they were talking about when they say love is blind, it's infatuation is blind. Anybody married here will tell you, love is a magnifying glass, right? Love is blind. Infatuation is not an act of choice. You're a victim. It could be a cosmic accident. It could be a random occurrence. It's not something you work on, something you do. Infatuation happens to us with little effort, no work, no commitment, very much beyond our control. So in truth, infatuation is built upon real feelings, but it's rooted in self-love, not love for the other person. Self-love. More about you, less about the other person. This feeling of infatuation is a feeling that results when there's something about the other person, external to who they intrinsically are, that has attracted you. Could be a combination of their looks, their job, their family status, their popularity, their friends, social status, where they live, educational background. Any of those factors is an external factor, perhaps, that could draw a person. And then that feeling is not necessarily rooted in who they intrinsically are. It's that external factor has produced a feeling inside the person. And these external feelings, these feelings produced from external factors can be incredibly illusionary because temporarily they could make you feel whole. Make us feel whole. It could give us feelings of greater affirmation, validation, confirmation, and then it really fills deeper rooted issues like insecurity, lack of self-worth, self-value, that you're worthy to be loved, and we are desperate to fill any of those holes inside of us. So it's a little tricky. Sometimes those external things about people, at first they appear certainly like the real thing. Love your neighbor as yourself teaches us you got to love yourself first. Definitely. Love starts, for another person, love starts with your own self-love, your own self-acceptance, self-value, self-worth. And the more that you know that about yourself, that you're worthy of being loved, the less I need from you, the less I take from you, the less it's about me, it's more about you and what I could bestow in who you are. And those feelings, those infatuated feelings, are really Band-Aids to make ourselves feel whole. And to the extent that those feelings are dependent upon these external factors, is to the extent that when those external factors change, your feelings change. The Band-Aid falls off and the feelings inside of us can change. I have a friend who married an absolutely gorgeous girl, nice girl. They were really living an upper middle class life. My friend he's the guy, he's handsome as can be. And a huge economic downturn happened and their lifestyle changed dramatically. And he started to search more for meaning. And they had less of the entertainment, restaurant, vacation, lifestyle. And she became very confused with her feelings. And she was sort of innocent in a way, innocent. And eventually, unfortunately in this case, she had an affair and they eventually got divorced. Now, I want to say, of course, it's not all black and white. She had true feelings for him. But at some point, at some level, obviously what was mixed in was the lifestyle that they shared, or his handsome look. It's pernicious. You don't know what the mix is exactly. I remember coming home with finally the girl of my dreams in my 20s, so I thought. And I came home and I introduced her to my parents, and I tell my parents how great this girl is. And she leaves, and my parents are like, we don't know what you're looking at. And I was like, really? She's this and this and that? And it was true. And in the rearview mirror, nothing. But I was fooled. Rabbi Noach Weinberg, my Rosh Hashiva at Aish Torah, he said, don't marry someone until you find 5 faults in them. You hear that? I'm not calling you. Anyway, it's not saying that, the person that you want to be involved with, it's not that you don't see that the person's a person and they have the greatness of character traits, but like I mentioned, how much is mixed in the external factors? And how much of that, something about the person, makes you feel big about yourself. Now, I just want to make the following point before we move on. I'm not suggesting that external factors are totally irrelevant and unimportant. They do have a vital vital and important function. It's like the wrapping of a birthday present. The wrapping of a birthday present is to draw attention that represents the beauty inside the package. Draw attention inside. And the outer beauty should be commensurate with the inner beauty. But don't get confused what's the main thing, the outer and the inner. The rabbis teach in Pirkei Avos, Al tistakel b'kankan ela ma sheyesh bo. Don't look at the jug, rather you got to look at what's inside. Why does he have to say don't look at the jug? Because I want to look at the jug. The jug's the physical world. The physical world is what I see. But don't get confused about what's on the inside. Don't mistake the attractiveness and the shape of the jug that it necessarily tells you about the wine inside. But the jug should be attractive enough to draw your interest and your curiosity about the wine. Still, no matter, and everyone here who's married will tell you, no matter how diligent you are in choosing a spouse, I would say it's quite normal to discover a few surprises that Hashem has in store for you once you get married. But we do our best. Now, if we don't have a clear definition of love, it's hard to know how to love. And without a definition of love, like what should I be doing, it's just very difficult to generate the loving feelings on demand. Right? I mean, without a definition of what to do and how to do it, then it seems like either you love somebody, you don't love somebody, or some people, I don't find them lovable. So to accomplish anything in life, one needs a definition. So I had this conversation with somebody. I asked, are you rich? They said, well, what do you mean? I say, what do you mean, what do you mean? They said, I can't tell you if I'm rich, if you don't tell me what your definition is. And that's true. See, Judaism has an interesting definition of rich. It's to be happy. You need a definition with everything. Rabbi Noach Weinberg used to illustrate it with this point. He used to say to us, do you befufstik? It's like, what? Well, just tell me, do you befufstik, yes or no? And we'd say, well, we can't, what's befufstik? And he would say, If you tell me what befustik is, I could tell you whether or not I befustik. So similarly, in order to love, I need a definition so I know how to acquire it. Hold on to it and get it back if it's lost. So I'd like to share the following story that happened with my wife, Denise, in Eretz Yisrael. And this is a true story. This is one approach to the definition of love. You're going to enjoy this story. It's a great story. It's fun. So my wife and I wanted to get married in Israel. And if you ever want to do something complicated in life that tests your patience and your relationship, and you like a lot of bureaucracy, then you get married in Israel. So there we were. We were engaged, and the big important day came where we had to get all of our paperwork together. We had to go to 3 different offices. And we needed the paperwork from Office 1 and Office 2 to take to Office 3 on time. And if you don't have it, don't even bother. It's a lot of pressure. So before we continue, just one caveat. I want to say, when you're still in the engagement period with one another, I say you're still in the sales cycle, right? You're selling yourself until the wedding happens. When the wedding happens, you're under the chuppah. That's like the final sale, no return. But until that, you're on your best vacation. You're in the sales, right? So you want to be on your best behavior. And on the contrary, during the engagement period, you want to show your best, right? You want to be your absolute best to give the other person tremendous confidence about what they're getting, who they're getting. They're getting married, very exciting. So that was my caveat for the following story. So having said that, our first appointment was 9 o'clock. And I get there at 8:45. I like to be prompt. Know where this is going? And here I am, I'm waiting for Denise. It's now 8:55. No big deal. We're right, the building's right there, okay. 9 o'clock comes, 9 o'clock goes. Now I'm a bit concerned. 9:10 now, I'm getting a bit frustrated. I'm more than a bit concerned now that we're going to miss appointment 2, appointment 3. Oh my gosh. I'm thinking like by 9:20, is this going to be my whole life? Like I hate being late. I hate it. And it's beginning to dawn on me the following. I'm prompt, she's not. I begin to have what I call an all-out thought attack. Now, whatever I'm going to describe now is for every situation in our life. I have an all-out thought attack. What is a thought attack? And here I get into my head. I mean, if she understood how important this day was to us, how could she be late? I mean, she doesn't live that far. She could have gotten up early. Gosh. And so many things start coming to my mind. She had plenty of time to get there. I called her last night to make sure she was up early. She's so inconsiderate. Maybe she's an inconsiderate person. I don't want to marry an inconsiderate person. Oh my gosh, my mind was spinning out of control. And now I'm focusing not only on this one negative trait, I'm going through my Rolodex, right? Inconsiderate, not thoughtful. My head's going, right. So I'm at the point in my mind's eye that this marriage is going to be really a mistake. And it's now 9:25. I'm ready to throttle her if she shows up. And then I notice myself. I am a guy, it's true, but I have some level of self-awareness at some point in time. You know, my Rabbi Noach Orlwick told me, Rabbi Noach Orlwick, he said there's two types of men. There's men who don't get it, and there's men who know that they don't get it. So I like to consider myself the latter, you know. I mean, by the way, I just want to tell you, it's funny, I'm giving you the 10 habits of love here. I'm not beyond reproach. There was 2 times in my marriage where I was called out on the carpet, like, you know, my wife went to the rabbi, apparently I wasn't listening so well, and one was with Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky, a big name, and one was with Rav Yitzchak Berkowitz from Eretz Yisrael, if those know him, he's a very big person. Twice, you know, I get into the office, and there's my wife with the rabbi. So I'm not beyond, I just want to tell you, I'm not beyond. Regular guy here. Anyway, so I start to think about myself, like, is this how I really want to act? Is this what I want to really be? I had some good times with her. I had some great times with her, and she's the person I really wanted to marry. And is this what I want to have happen? She's going to walk in, I'm going to throttle her? And thank God I was in yeshiva. Thank God. Because in yeshiva, one of the great things about being in yeshiva is societal conditioning in yeshiva. Everybody wants to be good. Everybody wants to do the right thing. So you're always around many incredibly growth-oriented people who want to be great, and they share a lot of Torah wisdom. So I start to think about Reb Noach Weinberg, what would my Rebbe do? And I remember him saying his understanding of the Rambam's definition of love in the mitzvah, V'ahavta re'echa kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. And I start to hear Reb Noach in my head. Love is a pleasure, an emotion. The pleasure that one receives when identifying virtues of another human being and identify that that person is one and the same as their virtues. I'll have to say it again. Love's a pleasure, like an emotional pleasure that one gets when you identify virtue in another human being and you identify that that person is one and the same as their virtues. That's how you see them. So and he explains that people are their virtues, and their lackings are just an aberration to who they truly are. They are their divine soul, their beautiful selves, their intrinsic identity. As Hashem blew a breath into Adam, a neshima, Adam became a living being. He became a neshama. That is our intrinsic identity. So Reb Noach taught us to play the love game either in writing or in speech, which is for me, I took out a piece of paper on the spot. We're in the middle of the story still. So on the spot, it's 9:25, 9:30, I don't know. I take out a piece of paper and I start to write down all of Denise's virtues. And I focus on the fact that these virtues are truly who she is, what she wants out of life, who she truly wants to be. I got to virtue 27 when Denise came. And she went from a moment of, oh my gosh, I can't believe what I did to us. you're going to hate me, and you're not going to want to marry me. So that moment with Denise was a moment of love and connectivity where all my frustration shrank. And that was the greatest thing that we could have shared in our life. And that's why the story still now remains 23 years later, because it's a true story. And that's it. At that moment, when Denise came, all I saw was her virtues. That's all I saw. And the fact that she was late was incidental, and incidental to part of who she was. Yeah, she was late. Yes, it's not whitewashing it. Yes, it bothers me that she was late, and it bothers me that she's late even today. She's late, I don't like it. But when it comes down to it, it's not who she is. And I see that much more clearly now. At the moment I was doing it's called the love game. And that's what you should do on the way home. On the way home, start thinking about the person that you came with and share with each other. This is what I really find virtuous in you. You got to do it all the time. And we do this around our Shabbos table, by the way, all the time. When I make a birthday card out for my kids, sometimes, I did do that for you once, right? I made a list of your virtues. Oh gosh, what are you going to say? What are you going to say? I will tell you this, my 8-year-old, Ellie made, for my birthday this year, Ellie made a list for me of my virtues. Everything I give her. Okay. I do want to make one caveat, if I can. One caveat to just go back on something before we go forward. I just want to point out the fact that it's an unbelievable thing to think that Judaism commands us to love. Right? How do you, you're commanding an emotion. That is a revolutionary type of thing, right? And it's an obligation. I was saying before, like an obligation to love. How could God obligate us to love each other? Isn't that an interesting question? Commanding an emotion, but now, by the way, now I kind of answered that a little bit, commanding emotion. One aspect of that was, love is knowing another person's virtues and focusing on them. That's how I can love somebody. But let's just take one step back, if we can, please. I just want to talk about how the word obligation, because obligation is not a word so easily people relate to today. I work a lot with young professionals in Philadelphia. They don't like the word obligation. People that have been around for a while, obligation is a word that's much more comfortable. But today's generation, and oftentimes it could be at the table like, Rabbi, you can't obligate me to do anything. Either I love somebody or don't love somebody. Love is something that just happens to you, right? It's outrageous to consider that love is an obligation, right? So let me suggest the following. This is what I say to them. Let me suggest that you're a lot more comfortable with the word obligation than you think. And let me illustrate. I say to them, should you love your neighbor? Is it a good thing to do? Love your neighbor? It's a good thing? It's the right thing to do, love your neighbor? You should, right? Isn't should a little like obligation? That's what you should do. So furthermore, then I say, if they don't buy that, I go, look, let's say you have 2 kids. You got 2 kids, and one of them says, I hate my sister. What would be your knee-jerk reaction as a parent? What did your parents say to you? You have to love your sister. What are you talking about? There's nothing more upsetting to a parent that gets a parent angry when one of the kids says, I hate my sister. And you're like, for what? And the kid says, well, I hate my sister. I can't love that brat. And then you get really frustrated. And you say, well, why? Why? Well, they took the bigger piece of cake. What? Smack them. Really? As parents, we naturally obligate our kids to love each other. So too, Hashem obligates us to love each other. Okay, now we can go forward. One thing that we see in terms of focusing on the virtues is that love is based upon knowledge of the other. And we see it in the Chumash. In Parshas Vayera, Hashem is thinking about telling Avraham about his intention to destroy Sodom. And Hashem says, shall I conceal from Avraham what I shall do? Avraham is surely to become a great and mighty nation. all the nations of the earth will be blessed through him. And then the Chumash says, Hashem says, for I have known him. And Rashi on the spot says, Lashon Chiba, love. Hashem loves Abraham. Why? Pasuk continues. Because he commands his children and his household after him that they keep the ways of Hashem, doing charity and justice. That's why. Hashem loves Abraham because he knows who he is. He sees him as his virtues. The Torah also says that Adam had known Chava, love. When Chava, Eve, was finally brought to Adam, what did Adam say? Oh, this time, bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. That's the deepest knowledge possible. The deeper the knowledge about a person, the deeper you truly see them for the neshama that they are, the deeper the permanent feelings you have for one another. And those feelings are tied to their intrinsic essence, tied. The soul of that person. Those feelings won't disappear so easily, and if they do, you have an avenue, a way to go get them back. So I want to say, focusing on a person's virtues it's not just a technique. It's a directional to the inner dimension of a person. To know the other person. They're a neshama, and they're not the sum quality or category of those external qualities that attracted you. And those those go away over time. We see it in Torah. I'm going to say one more Torah source. The Torah describes a comparison of two types of love, the love of Amnon and Tamar, and the love of David and Yonatan. So love between Amnon and Tamar was his half-sister. That love disappeared right after he forcibly raped her. That wasn't love. It was lust. The rabbis say that love, although it wasn't love, was dependent upon Tamar's beauty. And then it was done. But the love between David and Yonatan was based upon their love, their intrinsic qualities about each other, and they fulfilled the ultimate of love your neighbor as yourself, as it says that Yonatan loved David as his own very soul. Beautiful. Okay, so how do we move forward on this? So I'd like to suggest the Torah's description of bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh, and the fact that Yonatan loved David as his own soul suggests that the goal of all relationships, this is very important. If you just walked in, this is the most important thing. The goal of all relationships is oneness, whether you're married or you're not. And having that goal of oneness can help us in the relationship to know where you're going with it, what direction, and what you're shooting for. So let's start with oneness in marriage. There are two accounts of the creation of man in the Torah. The first one is Adam and Chava are one unit. You think you have problems. One unit. And in that account of the Torah, it says that Adam, Chava and Adam together in one unit, was made in the divine image, and in the image of God they were created, and it says Hashem blessed them. They shared one mind, one body, one soul, one heart. And it is that creation of Adam that was made in the divine image. And you simply, apparently, can't get better than that, could you? Yet, we see a second account of the creation of man when Chava and Adam were split up into two, and there's no description of man being created in the image of God. So here's the question. If Hashem was eventually going to split up Adam and Chava into two, why did he make them one unit in the first place? And if the first account of the creation of Adam and Chava was one unit made in the divine image, with one heart and one soul, why split them up? That question I may not touch right now, but the first one I will. So what's the reason why Hashem first made them as one if it was just going to split them up anyway? So the intuition will tell you, your gut, is that the goal, Hashem's telling you what the goal of all relationships and marriages, oneness, one. And we wouldn't have known that if Hashem just started out making a creation of Adam and Chava separately. We would not have known that. So when Hashem brought Adam, he brought Chava to Adam, Adam was like, oh, bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. In reality, oneness. So too is the same with your spouse. Sages teach us that you were one with your spouse in Shemayim at one point. Before you split off and came into this world, 40 days after conception, form of the fetus, right? At that moment of your birth, it was announced in heaven that you would be marrying your other half in this world. And you come down in this world and you're looking for your other half the whole time. So you're one soul above, and now you're looking to complete yourself in this world. The entire work of marriage is making that oneness, which is a spiritual reality. When you get married with Kedushin under the chuppah, you fuse back together as one neshama again in the spiritual world, and now in the physical world, you have to reflect that reality up on high. Until you feel in this world with your spouse, I am she is me. Now, I was in yeshiva. At the time, I heard what I thought at the time was the hokiest story of all time. And at the time, it made no impression on me, and I thought it was like, I don't want to say, God forbid, scoff, but like hokey. So Rabbi Aryeh Levin, the tzaddik in our time, there's a story, a famous story everybody tells. His wife's leg was hurting. They went to the doctor, and he rushes to the doctor, says, doctor, our leg hurts. I first heard that, I'm like, come on, right? Talmud describes the secret of marriage. Talmud describes the secret of marriage as seeing yourself and your spouse as one, as if the following. If you were cutting something with your right hand, and you accidentally cut your left hand, it would be like your left hand says, give me that knife, and cuts the right hand. Like you're cutting yourself. When with the other half in our life, our spouse, when we have our difficulties, we are just hurting ourselves. Because literally that is really the way it is. If we see each other as one, then just as that person has the greatest ability to see themselves as totally virtuous all the time, that's the way we see ourselves, totally virtuous all the time. We see ourselves as our highest potential, even if it's not actualized. And if we see that other person like ourselves, we can judge them the same way, which is a beautiful idea. Love your neighbor, your very self, is the same concept of the oneness for non-married relationships, but exactly the same idea. As we said, the love between David and Yonatan fulfilled the ultimate of love your neighbor as yourself, as it said Yonatan loved David as his own very soul. So I'd like to take it now one more step in a more practical fashion. I would say up until now, we have a pretty strong philosophical love framework. We've covered many of the essential love prerequisites, the ingredients, but for the remainder of the talk, I really want to talk more about how do we practically create, cultivate, and build a deeper connection with one another, resulting, hopefully, God willing, in a greater love together. So the following is going to be the key. So right now, this is it. If you hadn't heard anything up until now, this is the thing that, this piece of wisdom is my favorite piece of wisdom in the world. So it says in the Rambam's explanation of the mitzvah, love your neighbor as yourself, in the Mishnah Torah, it says that one must cultivate a desire to fulfill what is important to your friend. One must cultivate a desire to fulfill what is important to your friend. A rabbi friend of mine, Rabbi Noach Orlowick, who I've already now quoted a couple of times, he summarized this idea in the most practical definition of love that I like it better than the virtues one. What is important to you is important to me. That's it. What's important to you is important to me. What else do you need? As long as it's important to you, that is what counts. So I also heard from Rabbi Orlowick, he wanted to flesh this out a bit, and he said you could view a relationship as summing it up in the way of it's just about deposits and withdrawals. Our goal is to maximize deposits and minimize withdrawals. A deposit is totally dependent not on the intention of the giver, but totally dependent upon the feeling of the recipient. It matters how the person felt about it. It doesn't matter if you're like, I was just trying to help, my intention was good, I'm just trying to give you constructive criticism. Withdrawal, withdrawal, withdrawal. As long as it doesn't make the other party feel good, it's a withdrawal. Now, it might be necessary to make a withdrawal from time to time. I would do it as sparingly as possible, right? It might, certain circumstances of withdrawal, taking a withdrawal from somebody might be the right thing to do, but make sure that bank account is overflowing with deposits before you do it. Maximizing deposits means that to the extent it's important to her, it's to that extent that it will be a deposit that she will really cherish. It will mean something to her. But I have to point out that there are often times, of course, I would like to, as many times as possible, to deposit something that's very, very important to my wife. But sometimes, something that's very important to her is something I really don't care about. Can that happen? Like flowers. I don't care about flowers, but it's important to her. It could be something that I don't even want to talk about, like the meal plan for the week. It could be something that I'm not interested in, like a Facebook video, or maybe a show that she watched, right? It could be something that's very hard for me to muster energy to do, like caring about the cleanliness, organization, and neatness of the house all the time, right? It could be something that I'm not natural at, like putting down the toilet seat. Or it's something they could find something very difficult to do, something that requires a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of money. Now, if you do those things for her, and she is paying attention, she's got to be able to pay attention to what you're doing for her. And then she has to really appreciate the deposits. You know, sometimes people are just black holes. You just do for them, do for them, do for them, and they don't accumulate anything in their bank account. Separate topic. And if she has an attitude of gratitude, if she doesn't have the attitude, it's just coming to me, then anytime I do something that really hard for me, not interested, looms very large in her eyes. Now, there's a huge big but in here. A big but. That's very important to understand in making this paradigm work on a practical basis for all of us. To the extent that those things for me are not interesting or not natural or hard and I don't feel like doing it, if I do it, it's a withdrawal from me at the same time I'm making the deposit for her. That's just the honest reality of it. Right? Anytime because it depends how I feel. I'm doing something fantastic for her, but if I'm not feeling, it's hard for me, then that is a withdrawal. So if it's also her goal to maximize deposits and minimize withdrawals. So if something's really, really, really important to her, and she knows where I'm at, where I'm holding on a particular area, she'll be able to be a little sparingly. And then if she's sparingly, I'm more apt to do it. And if she's sparingly, I'm more apt to feel good about her and want to do more for her. We work together. It makes us constantly evaluate kind of what we do for each other in a certain way. Now, of course, the ideal in life is that every time I would do something for her, it would be my absolute pleasure. It would be lishma. I'd be doing it for the sake of the right reason. There would never be a withdrawal. I'm like an angel. It's just my pleasure. I would love life to be like that. Love it. But this is a very realistic paradigm, and it depends upon one's honesty with each other and not being offended if your partner isn't where you think they ought to be. They don't think of you as much as you think they ought to. It can't work that way. You can't hope that your partner is someplace other than where they're at. And that is a secret. That's the secret of love. Secret of connection. Secret. That's the secret. If you're interested, I'm going off the sheet here. You know, I've been in outreach. I've been in Jewish educational outreach for like 25 years. And I did have my own relationship to some of these ideas in terms of outreach. I worked for Rabbi Michal Twersky for 5 years in Milwaukee, and Rebitz in Twersky. 5 years I was with them. I saw the Gedolim of Kiruv. Ask me what they really do for Kiruv. How they built a community like almost from scratch there. It's a beautiful community. They do really nothing. They don't have any Kiruv techniques. They do nothing. You know what they do? They create a space inside of themselves to love a person. They respect them. They care about them. And people want to be with the Torahs because they can just be themselves. There's no expectation. When you expect a partner to be anywhere else but where they're at, then you're interested in yourself. Because it's arrogance. I think you should be someplace else and you're not. So the key to life, certainly, and the key to this paradigm is total acceptance of where the person is. I wish he would be more sensitive, but he's not. Where he's at right now. Because there's a certain innocence to that. But you do want to have goodwill together, like we're both trying the best we can. You have to feel that. You do have to feel that. We're both in this together, this paradigm, and we're trying the best that we can. So I just want to give over now an example. How this all works. A classic example would be like the following for me. It's 11:30 at night. I'm past my bedtime. I should be sleeping, but my wife catches me that I'm not yet. I'm almost sleeping, and my wife Denise tries to get my attention, and after ignoring her twice, I hear her, "Honey, would you please check the doors? I don't know if they're locked." "Honey, trust me, they're locked." "Could you please check?" What's my goal? What's my goal? My goal is to maximize deposits. How important is it to her? Immensely. How much will it take out from me? A lot. Now, I need to know how important it is to her. She needs to know how difficult it is for me, whether I want to do it or not. The greatness of my wife is that she does not expect me to be anywhere that I'm at. It's really, as I was preparing this class, I'm telling you, I felt more love for her. And I went and I told her, I said, "Honey, there's plenty of things. We have our stuff." But she's a guttle in this. She's tremendous. So we use this paradigm as our language. That's what I like about this. Deposits, withdrawals, it's a language you could use together. So I say, "Honey, I'll do it, but it's going to cost you." Right? So, okay, and then she's okay with that. Like, do you really want it? "Honey, is that really important?" "Okay, it's really important to you, I'll do it." Okay. So I just want to give another one personal example of how I went from lo lishma, the last thing in the world is I ever wanted to do it, to I've come to a point of it's my pleasure. All right, lo lishma to lishma. So I started, by the way, at age 29 with Aleph Beis. I spent 7 years in Eretz Yisrael at Aish Torah, and my wife and I were one of the founding rabbis and rebbitzins of Aish Torah Philadelphia. And I was 20 years younger, a lot of energy, hard charging, want to do great, raring to go. I'm all dressed up. I've got my briefcase. I'm going to the office. And I'm just about to the car. And my wife says, "Honey." I'm like, what could she possibly want? What, honey? "Could you please take out the garbage?" Now, again, we're 20 years ago. She is so inconsiderate, so inconsiderate. I go in, I stomp around, I take the garbage, I'm like, "Can't you see that I'm ready to go to work?" Now, of course, I reflect on myself in the car, how badly I behaved. I call her up. I said, honey, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I said anything to this. I appreciate it. Honey, would you please let me know in advance to take out the garbage? I still wasn't there yet. Hilarious. So this is how men are. I'm sorry. I apologize. I apologize for our species. So anyway, I take out the garbage. I take out the garbage at that point. This is like stage one. Stage one is I take out the garbage because I want to be a good person. I want to be a good husband. I want to be a great, right? I want a great obituary when they talk about me. I'll take out the garbage. Now, then I realize, of course, that maybe, just maybe, I should take out the garbage because it's important to her. And she shouldn't have to ask. I should take it out. I should take it out without her asking. That's stage two. All right, I'll take it out without her asking, but I'm still not into it. I don't really like taking out the garbage. The garbage doesn't really bother me. I could just trip over it. I like how she puts it right in front of the door, and like, honey, you stepped over the garbage. But it didn't occur to me, right? Can that happen? That can happen. So, because it's not something I naturally think about. So, of course, the goal is to raise it to the next level. And I try to motivate myself, right? Motivate myself. I tell myself to the extent that she knows it's not important to me, I couldn't care less. Then if I do it, she feels really good about it for the sake of the relationship. I get myself going a little bit. Now, I just want to point out again, she has to be very mature and not take it personally and be offended that it's just not important to me. It's not personal, although it appears that way. So anyway, I had an unbelievable experience about 6 weeks ago already. I had a great experience, one of the greatest experiences of my life. I saw the garbage. I was like, ugh, the garbage. And I picked up the trash. I went to the garbage and I put it. And on the way back, I'm thinking, why is the garbage bothering me? Wow, I'm bothered because it bothered Denise. And that occurred to me that that's the story in Dr. Our Leg Hurts. It's not so ridiculous and it's not so hokey. I'm really bothered by the garbage now. I'm bothered by the garbage now. I've redeemed myself. But it's true, because I was committed to, if it's important to you, it's important to me. That was my goal. My goal is oneness. It's my goal in the marriage. It's her goal also. And I want to care about what she cares about. It's never going to be Kardashian, but we'll do our best. So, a couple of motivational strategies, okay? The question really I have gotten plenty of times before is, how do I get myself to care about things I don't care about? Right? How do I get myself to care about things I don't care about and do better at, if it's important to you, it's important to me? These are strategies. Number one strategy, Mesilas Yesharim, Path of the Just by the Ramchal, says in paraphrasing, the way Reb Noach Weinberg paraphrases the Ramchal, a person's got to know what they're living for. Got to know what they're living for. What do you truly want out of life? You really want to be a good person. You want to be a good husband. What do you want to have written about you in your obituary? Right? You're a soul, you live to 120 years, you're hovering over the shiva of your family. What do you want to hear about you? Mom and Dad had such a special marriage. There's nothing Mommy and Daddy wouldn't do for each other. They really were unbelievable how committed their loving relationship together. What do you want? That's what you want. The Vilna Gaon says the ultimate purpose, his slice of the ultimate purpose of life, is to refine your character traits. God is best defined as a lover. Walk in Hashem's ways. You must be a lover. That is a life goal, to be a lover. And Judaism, you know what Jewish spirituality is? Jewish spirituality isn't, I'm in touch and experience love, I become a lover, rooted in my character. Love your neighbor as yourself is the how-to. Accomplish the greatest thing you accomplish. Be like God. Lastly, Rav Dessler. Rav Dessler says his famous approach to cultivate love is simply to give and give and give to the other. My insight, I haven't looked at it so deeply to be honest, my insight into that is I love myself above all else. And the more I give of myself to my partner, the more I see myself in that person. And as they grow in reaching their potential, I love that because that's a piece of me that becomes more. I become more through what I've given her. That's cool. And I'm invested. The more you give to something, you're invested in it. That's Rav Dessler. These strategies can hopefully help you motivate yourself to care about. Just a couple more little points. I do want to mention, in case you were asking the question in your mind, why did Hillel the elder say the essence of Judaism is that which is hateful to your fellow man, don't do? Why didn't Hillel say the pasuk in the Torah, v'ahavta re'echa kamocha? That's a good question. Why didn't Hillel say, when a prospective convert came to him, what's life all about, Judaism all about, Torah all about? Hillel should have said, v'ahavta re'echa kamocha. He said, no, that which is hateful to your brother, don't do. I can't go into the sugya now, of course, but the short of it is that there is a perspective in the Torah that it's not possible to love your neighbor as yourself. And there's a lot of proofs in terms of when it's myself and another person whose life comes first, mine does. So love your neighbor as yourself, my life comes first. And that it's not so realistic, love your neighbor as yourself. Hillel's pshat, his understanding of the pasuk, love your neighbor as yourself, is that which is hateful to your brother, don't do. I have it as definitely, it's got to be one of the 10 habits of love, which is at least stop bugging your partner. Right? Sur me'ra, aseh tov. That which is hateful to your brother, sur me'ra. Just stop doing those things. Because those things are just tremendous withdrawals. That's the quick of that. The price tag of all of this is commitment. You got to be committed to making this, that there's nothing more important to you. Just like anything that's worth pleasure in this world, every single thing that's a deep pleasure requires hard work, effort, discipline, stick-to-itiveness, consistency, goal setting, planning. There is no such thing. Love is not a walk in the park. But I want to tell you, there is a paradigm for us to learn from that we can understand what commitment really looks like in our lives. That's the relationship between a parent and a child. The relationship between a parent and child is this automatic, axiomatic, built-in commitment. A parent has a love for a child. That's what we need in our life. We're supposed to learn from that. It's a purpose. I just want to illustrate. You ask a lady who's pregnant, you say, are you going to love your child? What kind of question is that? What if your child's going to be like that kid down the block that you can't stand? You won't even let them in your house? Are you going to love your child? Of course I'm going to love your child, no matter what. A friend of mine, Rabbi, went to go visit went to a jail on visiting day. There was this lady, there were some Jews there. There was a lady whose son killed somebody and struck up a conversation. And the lady's like, he's such a good boy. I love him, no matter what. Lastly, you never have a situation the following. You never have Mr. Rabinowitz gather the kids around the table and says, kids, I've got something really difficult to share with you. I met the Steinberg kids. I'm in love with the Steinberg kids. And in a couple of weeks, I'd like you to move your stuff out. I'd like the Steinberg kids to move in. What's unbelievable about that is the children are we don't even choose our children. They just kind of wind up on our doors. You get what you get, and you don't get upset. And no matter what, you love your child. You don't choose it. But we spend so much time choosing our spouse, time and energy, and yet it's a 50% divorce rate. Commitment. We got to learn from that commitment. All right, I think there's more, but I think that's probably plenty. You got to be willing to pay the price tag. All true pleasure have a price tag, and you got to be willing to pay the price tag. So these are the 10 now the 10 habits of love. I have a couple of different lists that I made, and I purposely didn't make. I made a decision not to necessarily bring the list, but I was hoping that somebody here, some people here would listen to the shir, come up with their own list. I definitely will be coming up with my list, but I'd love some feedback. So if anybody wants to email me, my email is Rabbi, or any thoughts. I would love to hear any thoughts. My email is rabbiwithoutwalls@gmail.com. Rabbiwithoutwalls@gmail.com. That's my brand, Rabbi Without Walls. I'd love to hear from you. And this is, God willing, this is going to be part of an excerpt of a larger book that, God willing, that I'm working on, and hopefully will come out. I really appreciate your patience. I really do, very much so. You listened, and I hope I didn't matriach you more than had to. Thank you very much.